The following podcast is scheduled for one fall. Introducing first, the ace that runs the place, Sam Tate. And his tag team partner, Raw is Warren.
It's another Wednesday. That means it's another scheduled for one fall podcast. I'm back again with my best friend, Warren Sprague. Warren, how has wrestling been treating you recently? We had a couple big pay-per-views. You know, we started our podcast basically with a Royal Rumble, Royal Rumble shenanigans, and then we hopped right into Elimination Chamber, and it feels like no time passed at all before we were doing an AEW Revolution review. Glad I didn't fuck that one up. That's a tongue twister. So
that's true.
But it seems like since Elimination Chamber, WWE has cooled off quite a bit, but I want to hear your takes. How has the wrestling world in general been treating you recently?
Well, I respect that perspective because I think you're right. I think WWE has cooled off a little bit more than they want to as we're approaching WrestleMania. We've seen a few marquee matches actually go up in smoke just as early as tonight. We did get an exciting announcement of Edge versus potentially Demon Finn Balor in Hell in a Cell this evening on Monday Night Raw. Like, ooh, that would be fun. And so we really need to see the momentum pick up for the biggest match and the biggest pair of nights of the year in WWE's calendar coming up so quickly on April 1st and 2nd. And as you look around at AEW, they're starting some new storylines, rehashing some other ones as well. We'll break down what we think about the state of their direction. It's a bit tepid, more tepid than I thought it would be as we're getting so close to the grandest stage of them all. So I wonder what your impression is, Sam. Would you agree? Are you feeling a little out of love with the content you've been exposed to over the last week?
Well, I gotta say, I'm definitely... Gosh, there's so much. I'm so mad you mentioned the Judgment Day thing right off the bat because we got to talk about that. We'll go piece by piece because I don't want to get all over the place with this. I want to start with Judgment Day because I think it's a perfectly good example of like where being a wrestling fan in today's world is so different than it used to be. Because if you remember, do you remember what was the reasoning that was supposedly the backstage reason of why Edge didn't want to be in the Judgment Day?
Well, I think the rumor was that they didn't want... There was a problem with the supernatural aspects of where the faction was going.
Exactly. And what fucking supernatural aspect has there been?
Well, not
a fucking one.
Point, unless you count darkened lighting and pyro, which, most wrestlers include that in their presentation. And
unless you count whatever spell you have to cast on the audience to make us believe that Rhea Ripley would give Dominic Mysterio the time of day. That black magic, is that the shit we're talking about? Because I was excited when I heard that. I'm a mark for shitty Vince Russo ideas, as long as like the presentation is there. Because I think Russo gets a lot of shit for a lot of his really bad ideas, but he doesn't get any of the credit for the very few good ones. I mean, it doesn't like change his legacy, and I'm not like a Russo fan, but there's a lot of stuff that I miss that people go, oh, this has Russo all over it. But it's always the stuff that had really good presentation and had people do it well. When you have people do a dipshit on a pole match and they fucking fall off the pole and the pole falls over and the fucking lady you want to put on a pole is too fat so you have to bring out a forklift, yeah, that shit's dumb as fuck. When you've got 50-year-old wrestlers who don't want to fucking be there and are trying to have a 6-minute match with a gimmick, yeah, that's going to fucking suck. But when you've got like an 8-minute long sacrificial, we talked about this on the podcast before, Undertaker doing like a full-on blood altar ritual with speaking in tongues and Midian coming back to life or whatever the fuck, being reborn as a minion, all that shit. That shit was said to have Russo all over it, but they killed it because the presentation was fucking stellar. And so if there's anything WWE actually does better than any other company, it's presentation. So I was psyched for it. I'm upset now because it doesn't exist.
Well, I think it all comes down to a single word. It's called commitment. And commitment in this context is, are you going to present the different aspects of like the visuals that are needed to really put over the idea? It's the commitment that we saw in the Ministry of Darkness stuff that helped that rise above the corniness of the content written down, if that makes sense. And there's a lack of commitment right at the moment for much of what we're seeing going on in WWE. And, well, we have to wonder if the presentation will prove us wrong when WrestleMania comes around. Are we going to see the Demon Finn Balor come back all nice and crystal clear? What about that being the supernatural aspect of the Judgment Day, even after Edge has moved away? Kind of an interesting thing where we may end up seeing a supernatural contest anyway. And I'm wondering, why Edge hasn't really like done this whole, oh, I'm an actual vampire take on his
Bro,
character at all, right?
how big of a pop did the Brood entrance get? He did it by himself.
Oh my god. Like, we all love the Brood's music, we all love the Ring of Fire, we all love the slow rise up through the flames. Like, that's just a universal good to many of us as WWE fans, I would wager. And it's not because we like vampires or blood sucking or anything,
I
but
mean,
it's
for
the
some people it
overall.
is. For some people it for
It
sure
is.
is.
Yeah. Yeah, especially the Rhea Ripley fans, I imagine, like there's that cool vampire vibe coming from
Yeah,
her.
never underestimate horny vampire fans.
Jesus.
The lesson you have to learn many times, unfortunately. But so when it comes to the supernatural element to Judgment Day, there's two things that stuck out to me as like, this could be really good if you actually, I mean, this would be catering to me, I guess, but that's the whole point of having a podcast. Of all the two dipshits who have a podcast out there, I don't know if the two of us are extra worthy or anything, but we certainly take the time to put this out there. So if you can share, share the video, have a like and subscribe, like that's our plug for this week.
It really is sincerely our plug for this week. Please, please.
So I can understand why this might seem super specific, right? But the two things that stick out is, one, Finn Balor has a supernatural element. He's got the demon thing going, and everyone loves it. People pop for it, and it's been gone for a while. They seem to bring it back, like, it's wild because it'll be gone for like just long enough, then they bring it back once and it like doesn't hit. It's like they just kind of bring it out of nowhere, because it's like, when have we done this in a while? And that kind of sucks, because if they just let it go till it really, really had something behind it, I think that would mean a bit more, but that's everything in wrestling these days. So Finn already has like a supernatural element to his background, and then Edge has ancient history with a supernatural background that wrestling fans are willing to tap into, as proven by just him coming out to flames and wearing sunglasses was a fucking huge pop. So if you can't find some fucking way to make those two elements copacetic in a wrestling story, like, fucking give up.
Well, I mean, it's time, if they're going to commit to the character of Demon Finn Balor in WWE lore, then let's get to know this character. It's too bad he hasn't been cutting Bray Wyatt's promos for the last 2 years, since we've been without our demon. I'm just saying, I loved the demon presentation.
Do you remember, we talked about this, I think 2021 or something, actually, like, I very much remember having like one of our dream booking discussion. One of these days we're gonna get like a second podcast that's just only dream booking. But like the dream book for me was always that like Bray Wyatt is a guy who tries to find monsters and he wants to control them, bring them into his family or whatever, because wrestling has always been filled with monsters, and they've always been filled with someone essentially smaller than them trying to control them, right? And so you've got Rowan and Harper and, at one point even Braun Strowman, and like these are all great like starter monsters or whatever, and they all fit like a specific type, but diversify, get a little more supernatural, less muscly, and get like, a demon, something with presentation that's not just hillbilly. Like diversify your presentation a little bit, but with a common thread. People love that shit. People like to categorize things. They like to fill in the blank between things that are similar. That's like the whole. That's really like the whole aspect of people who like to collect stuff like stamps or like rocks or whatever. We want to categorize, and our brain wants to recognize patterns. So you find the common thread and you can link those two things together. And so the dream booking for me for a long time was like Wyatt should be searching for like a way to control the demon or like bring it into the fold of his family of monsters and stuff. And if you had like a Judgment Day run where Edge was like, I want to have this asset to my, I guess, supernatural group, you know, and he's got familiarity, like you could literally just do a tie back. You could just do a tie-in to back when Edge and Christian used to fly down from the fucking rafters and hang motherfuckers with nooses for The Undertaker. You know? Like, do you remember that spot?
Oh man, no.
They fucking rappelled from the roof and tied a noose around. I think it was Big Boss Man. Maybe it was. It has to be Big Boss Man. Something like that. But they fucking hung a motherfucker live on pay-per-view.
Well, that was WrestleMania, and that was a Hell in a Cell match, was it not? And it was like, people don't talk about that Hell in a Cell match. Nobody talks about Boss Man.
That match sucked. But the fact that they hung a guy live on TV, like 10 feet in the air, you know, like, that shit's tight, you know? That's a practical, physical, live stunt, which is a good 50% of wrestling, you know? Like, especially when it comes to specifically, like, worked after-match stuff. But the point is like, if you had told me that it was like Bray Wyatt and Edge fighting over control of the demon, you know, and in there you could even have Finn Balor like lost in the middle of it, where he's like, no, fuck you guys, I don't fuck with the demon. Like that you could tell the story of the demon through Finn Balor not wanting to like associate with it or like telling you how he associates with it. You know what I mean? Like you wouldn't even have to like necessarily. Like you wouldn't need the demon to give a fucking promo or some shit, like, you know. But I would love something like that. I would love something where like people are trying to control supernatural forces within wrestling, maybe a la Undertaker Urn style, even something like that, where it shows like there's a struggle that's not about I want to be a champion and have a title belt because that's what wrestling's about.
Sure, I mean that's what's intriguing about House of Black. That's what's been intriguing about Bray.
Who, by the way, are champions now, and that's all they cared about, and they don't have any other don't get me started.
Right, we haven't seen what they're up to, right? Except we know that they're going to face whoever wins the Elite versus the Jericho Appreciation Society match this upcoming Dynamite. But other than that, we don't know how House of Black feels.
I think that's it. Isn't that a triple threat? I thought the House of Black was in that.
Well, that's right. They did say, hey, watch out, guys. We want all comers. So there is that. Their agenda is to kick everybody's ass.
That match sounds like it's going to be lit as fuck, but it's a TV match, so who knows? It could be 6 minutes.
I highly doubt it will in AEW land. I think AEW land will give that a good solid 22 minutes and take up a good chunk of their airtime and 2 commercial breaks. And, you know, that should be a real banger. I'm looking forward to that.
It is the Elite, so I wouldn't be surprised.
Yeah, why not? Just give them half the show. There's enough talent there to justify it. I mean, you want to the who's who of the top 10 in AEW is pretty much encapsulated in that match. So let it begin. But I'm always hoping we'll see more justification around these supernatural attitudes. Why is always a question that should be answered a little bit more in wrestling, because that's where the story gets uncovered. That's where the intrigue builds. That's where you get to know the characters. And just like in any show, any sitcom, any film, once you get to know the characters and they're established, that's when the play begins. You know, that's when as an audience member, you're intrigued week in and week out to understand why the chess pieces are moving the way they're moving. Why are characters developing in this direction? Why are stories going in this direction? I'm always hungry for that myself. So, commitment is what's the difference between a Vince Russo angle that succeeds and today's modern storytelling that fails is, are you really going all in on what you want us to believe? And that is another fantastic theme to some of the other topics you and I have kind of kicked around for this week. Commitment is what helps somebody like MJF ring true as one of the top wrestlers in the world by, I don't know, at least 20%, a hard margin. You and I recently agreed on this because he's so committed to the way he presents himself, whether it's hard to be that committed because he might truly believe all of the, rude, douchey things he's saying. Well, that's beside the point. He's still committed, and we as fans believe him. And that is what's making so many of the angles in supernatural land in wrestling right now feel a little wishy-washy, as there's a lack of commitment, and therefore, ergo, fan base, a lack of belief. You're failing for us to believe this. Why would Demon Balor want to come out to face the brooding Edge, right? If they are going to encapsulate those characters and heighten those supernatural elements and give us a different and warped version of each man in this Hell in a Cell match at WrestleMania, it could go down as one of the more memorable matches in several WrestleManias, if you don't mind me saying, because it will be really exploring the commitment into the supernatural that we have been longing for. But I highly doubt they're really going to cram a whole lot of why into this one. They're just trying to find a match that will help raise the hype level for the most important weekend of their year.
Yeah. Well, and I love that you bring up MJF, because he really is, I guess, like the other side of the coin, right? He proves that, like, because so, like, his motivations, the why behind MJF, there's no, like, overarching one. He's just very typical, like, cocky, I'm the best in the world and everyone screws me and Tony Khan doesn't give me any chances and, blah, 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 until finally he is at the top of the card. But along the way, throughout the whole thing, first of all, he's 100% committed. He's always on. He's always in character, right? Like, that's one thing to love about it, and it's always fresh. It's not the same tired catchphrases all the time. I think the worst thing, probably the worst MJF bit I've ever seen or heard that I remember is, I think a couple different times he's been doing like the promo with people, and he goes, "Oh, your breath smells like shit," but he has so many just throwaway, heel gag lines like that are laced in between pure gold that, like, it just builds to the character. It doesn't seem to detract from it. Whereas, like, for other heels, that's their whole build-up. That's their whole punchline, is the "your breath stinks," like non sequitur insult kind of a thing. So, and then on top of that, his character doesn't need this motivation or this why, because he takes every opportunity to give you some part of his character, and he's gotten help from people like Daniel Bryan to contextualize a lot of his character work. Like the stuff they did with the promos where Daniel Bryan did a callback to their promo before their match is exactly what pro wrestling needs right now. It needs the structure of people from the inside, from the wrestlers, who pay attention to the story from beginning to end, and by the end of it, maybe not recap it for you, but put a bow on it that, strengthens the moral lesson, if you will, the tie-in to it. Because when he did the promo, when Daniel Bryan did the promo about how MJF talked about not being able to play with his kids and being crippled in his old age, and then it was real to him in that moment. You remember I critiqued him tapping out really bad.
Yeah.
And that promo kind of won me over. It might have been a promo I could have seen before we did the podcast, but that's its own complaint for like how you get the full story from pro wrestling. So I don't remember the exact timeline on that one, but it is the kind of thing where going back and hearing that goes, oh, that makes it a lot more legitimate. It makes it more interesting, but it also kind of pokes a hole in why people, big companies don't try to tell super in-depth stories too often because it can be difficult to translate that visually.
Sure, it can be. But with the wrestlers engaged enough in their own character work to provide that context, it's a great word you used. The why and the context are often interchangeable. It adds a certain and several layers at sometimes amount of tangibility and believability and texture to these characters. And I think MGM,
MGM, little PTSD
MGM.
there, huh?
Oh my God. I used to work for MGM Resorts, my listeners, and it's Vegas. Welcome to Vegas. You work in Vegas hospitality, you're scarred enough. Spoiler alert. Anyway, MGF, wow, it happened twice. MJF has been providing so much context at every drop of a hat, like you put over just a moment ago. You look at the feud he had with CM Punk. How much of that feud was heightened by MJF's admission that, man, he was a Punk believer himself, and how much he looked up to Punk for his various attitudes over the years and wanting to emulate so much of that, only to prove that eventually he's better than CM Punk, and CM Punk knows it, right? The contextualization of his own catchphrase into so many of the different feuds he's had are in such a simple way make him so universally relatable. And what happens when you relate to something? You believe it. And that's what's making him fit into almost any context far more effortlessly than the half-cooked spooky stuff that we're seeing from certain corners of wrestling lore when they're not succeeding to the same level, like Bray's, quite honestly, at this point, or like Finn's, without the demon justification, the understanding, the context. What is this demon? I can't tell you how much more interesting Finn would be in standard form, I suppose, if there was a part of him that was afraid of himself. And there's no reason not to be with this interesting and dynamic character painted underneath his surface, just waiting to come out. And I long for that in wrestling. That's what made Undertaker so effective, for the record. He's a dead guy. There's a dude who carries what his soul is imprisoned in, and that's how that guy gets to run things for The Undertaker. Simple storytelling, but Undertaker himself is huge, imposing, capable of eliminating people because his body doesn't know pain. Context, context, context. And that's what's lacking in so much of what we're seeing in today's work that makes it harder to be excited about some of these big matches. I don't know why I'm supposed to believe I should care about Omos attempting to beat Brock Lesnar. There's no reason for me to like Omos or believe in him as a top-tier talent. He hasn't faced main event talent wrestlers more than 3 or 4 times lately, and he loses every single time. I'm expecting Brock to flip him around and end their match at WrestleMania. I don't believe in Omos. There's so many reasons why context is craved in today's wrestling world, and I think it heightens so much of what makes each wrestler, each storyline, each pay-per-view, each match, each segment so much more memorable.
Yeah, it's tough because if you ask me the why for MJF's character, right, it's the most bland, broken record kind of thing. He wants everyone to think he's the best, and he doesn't care how he does it. But then,
how is that anywhere different from what Ric Flair did for 16 world title reigns?
Right.
How is that any contrast?
Right. So that's what I'm saying. It's the most commonly repeated thing ever, right? But then it's not their entire personality. When your entire personality is, well, obviously anyone who is in this business wants to be... I hate that line. I hate that line so much because it just exposes how little you have to offer when your promo involves like everybody, I've always wanted to be World Wrestling Federation World Heavyweight Champion because it proves that you are the best in this business. Like, That's a line Triple H has said like over and over and over again, and he's one of the only people who's had a character that like builds above that. But once he started like that rhetoric and like that sort of line into the PG era, that's when you really get like everyone's least favorite Triple H runs, the face runs post DX, 2008 to 2010 when it was just like him, Jeff Hardy, and Edge just circling whatever title belt the Undertaker didn't have at the time. Like it was easily the worst version of him because he lost everything about his character, and everybody would make fun of it and be like, "Oh, this used to be the ass kicker, the anti-corporate guy, and now he's just generic. He's generic Mr. Wrestling. I show up and do my flex." Like he lost every part of his character because every single thing about him was just, "I'm a top guy. I'm a world champ. Why am I not in the world champ picture?" Like he had nothing else going on.
Exactly. Well, when you're out of wrinkles to your character, let's provide some more context. And oftentimes, you just have to look across the ring from you to see your opponent, to understand who you're dealing with, and build something based out of their personality that's believable enough to build friction with. I know I keep going back to Punk tonight, but man, was there not more volatile context provided to each of his feuds through his straight edge beliefs. He believed that if you were to do anything to your body outside of tattooing it, you're making yourself a lesser person than him. And that belief was strong enough that it created natural context, natural attention, and believable and relatable issues that would exist with A, B, C, D, E, F, and G of the superstars on the roster. It was natural for him to be able to take on many people amongst the top of the card with actual friction to appreciate. The same could be said, if you don't mind one more example, with the belief that Daniel Bryan had that that he was the planet's champion, that
Oh my
all the
god.
audience members were beneath him for how little they respected the planet. And
What a good gimmick.
what a great gimmick. It was just a crime that he had the title for as few amount of months as he did with that gimmick, because he could have lasted a good year, especially with that burlap sack title they made for him to help put over the character. Holy crap, that was cool looking back on it.
They
But
really
again,
they really had people out there booing the dude just trying to like clean up trash. They were booing
genius!
they were booing Captain Planet basically.
Amen. And that's genius, because it makes a viewer look at the audience, and it makes the viewer look at the wrestlers, and it makes the viewer question themselves a little bit. It's brilliant character. I'm so bummed that he never got that bigger time in the spotlight with that
Dude,
role.
that was such an underrated run because at some point it's like, how do you kill the yes movement thing, right? Like how do you kill babyface Daniel Bryan? He's over to the moon with yes, 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 but it gets stale. And I was afraid they were gonna just like force him to keep being bland babyface Daniel Bryan, because typically when something gets a crowd reaction in WWE, unless most of the time they ignore it for a year, I guess, with Daniel Bryan, but like once it catches on and they buy into it, they typically force you to beat that horse to death. And the fact that he still gets yes chance like to this day, makes me like amazed that they were willing to go in that direction. But God, when's the next time you're gonna get a guy who can pull that off? When's the next time you're gonna get the best fucking wrestler in the world alive today to pull off a gimmick like that for you? Like that's I don't know, Haley's Comet in pro wrestling.
Well, it all comes down to the workhorse mentality that doesn't just extend to the ring. It extends to every way you carry yourself, every decision you make when you're putting yourself in the public eye. You have to make the public believe you. and love you for whom you present yourself to be at all times. The Undertaker presented The Undertaker at all times. He did not break character for 20 to 30 years. That's insane. You know, outside of the obvious character break that was the entire American Badass segment, that was just that's respect, that's belief, that's iconic stuff. And the Planet's Champion was iconic. The Straight Edge Superstar was iconic. Edge's rated R character because he fucked everybody's girlfriend was iconic. You know, you can keep going. John Cena's most iconic aspect. Go ahead.
I love that you brought The Undertaker again, right? Because when it comes to Taker, one thing I want to point out, and this is something that's come up recently again, this is something I kind of lived through as a young teenager meeting other wrestling fans. I only really had like one group of wrestling fans, right, as a kid, and I didn't really get to watch too much of like Phenom Undertaker, but I remember wanting that character back because at the time, it's like 2002, 2003. You know, I told you the first wrestling pay-per-view I ever watched that my parents bought for me was when he debuted the fucking badass Undertaker gimmick. You know, literally the first time he comes out on the fucking motorcycle. And I remember...
Well, I have to ask you this, based off of something you've said in the past where you said, last week you said, when you meet a character and they make an impact on you, that's the identity that's burned into your brain your whole life. So I have to ask you this right now. When you hear the word Undertaker, are you envisioning American Badass because of that every time?
No, that's what I'm saying is I wasn't introduced to that character.
Oh, I thought you were. I thought
no, that's first pay-per-view.
Okay.
First pay-per-view I got to watch live. That is very different from first wrestling experience. So like, but that's my point is like I was introduced to that character who's doing blood sacrifices and raising minions and shit. And then even though I didn't get to watch it for maybe more than a year, you know, and again, like how good is the memory and brain of a fucking 8-year-old or whatever, right? Like, but even without that, I very distinctly remember playing the pro wrestling card game as a kid, and when he switched gimmicks, they had to reprint all of his cards with new art, and because of the way like WWE wants to promote their materials, they're like, you can't call him Undertaker anymore. He's not like that character. So you can't call it the Tombstone. He doesn't do that. He does the Last Ride. So they printed a Last Ride card, and it's exactly the same as the Tombstone Piledriver. It just has updated pictures and a different logo, right? So it was easy for me to get those cards, but the older cards, the old Undertaker cards with that logo and the Tombstone, right? Those were like hard to get because people wanted to like hold on to those now because they didn't know if that was ever going to come back type of stuff. And I remember wanting that character back so bad for so many fucking years. Even though it wasn't even like a core memory, it wasn't even like one of my favorite wrestlers. I just remember thinking like that version's so cool and it's gone now. And to this day, you know, I was listening to some fucking interview, you know, I'm starting to go through like the Undertaker's interviews now that he's doing them, right? It's something I've put off for I guess a year or two where he's really been in the public eye, and he mentions like people wondered why he showed up as badass Undertaker instead of the guy with the hat and the boots, as he put it. And he's like, I'm not doing the hat and the boots anymore because I already put that character to rest. And like the point of it was, you know, the badass Undertaker is like me as the character, and it's separate and distinct from the Phenom and stuff. And, you know, I just remember wanting the Phenom back. We got it back, and then it was like weird because it wasn't what I remember. It wasn't the same presentation with all the vignettes and the promos and stuff. It was just the entrance, and then it was like just this the signature moves. And for a lot of people, that's what it was about. It was about the presentation of the entrance and shit like that. But I'm like, where's the ministry? How come he has no acolytes? There's zero blood drinking on this show, and he didn't shoot lightning a single time. What the fuck? That's not what I wanted back. I didn't want hats and boots back. I wanted Taste My Lightning fucker back.
Well, he did pop some lightning here or there over the years, and
It struck the ring, but he didn't like lightning bolt someone in their face.
did he? Whom got the lightning bolt to face treatment in early years?
I think that was actually a Kane spot.
Is that trivia? Can we look that up? Who got zapped by Undertaker's lightning? I'd love to know.
I want to say what I'm thinking of is actually Kane shooting a fireball at China, but I know that one happened, but I'm pretty sure Kane also shot lightning. I'm thinking of Kane, I think, but there was definitely lightning shooting happening. It's one of the better practical effects you can do because you can like run a wire between two things and shoot an electrical charge through it, and it looks fucking sick. And they should do more of it. There should just be more lightning in pro wrestling in general.
I typed in on Google, I said Undertaker's lightning hits. That's all I did. And I have 2021, Undertaker strikes Randy Orton with lightning, June 23rd. Then I have Undertaker uses his powers to destroy the ring while Kurt Angle...
Yeah, I remember that one.
2013. How about this one? Undertaker walks through fire to challenge Kane in 2021. Like, there's enough of the supernatural stuff that they'd commit to. Like, it's there. There'll be little pops of it. Don't forget Great American Bash 2004, if I'm not mistaken. Could be a different year, but whatever. Paul Bearer's getting buried in cement while the Undertaker has a casket match, or like he's got to win the match fast enough before Bearer drowns in cement, right? Like there's that. They continued some of the lore, but I agree with you that it did lose a lot of its gravitas. For some reason, there wasn't a whole lot built around him, and perhaps he just didn't have much to contribute. Maybe he didn't want to go back to like, hand-picking disciples and things like that. It's been done before. I can imagine Mark Calloway probably felt. So,
for what it's worth, pretty much all the lightning stuff is just shit they edit on TV and you don't see it in the arena.
I was about to say, don't debunk the lightning for me, man.
Oh.
But I'm not in the mood to have that version of my childhood stamped out emphatically.
I'm just saying there are practical effects they do every now and then, but most of the stuff you listed was the same. Bray Wyatt had it, where it's like clearly cartoon lightning, and no one gave a shit.
You want to talk about versions of a character that somebody keeps every little fragment of memory of because they just want it back so bad. You walk into my house, friends, and you're going to find the Fiend's WWE title, and you're going to find the Fiend's t-shirt, and you're going to find the Fiend's pop figure. Like, even with the piss poor booking aside, I am still depressed that I don't get to look forward to that character again, and arguably, most likely, we won't get him back because Bray Wyatt is somehow, some way, just shitting everything out right now. Like, he's not even going to be on WrestleMania's card because of, quote, an undisclosed physical challenge or something like that, unquote. Like,
physical issue.
That sucks, man. I'm tired of, he's already a stop motion character at this point with very little structured progression, with a lack of, commitment either by the storyteller or the direction the story's going to. It's just haze. And for a while I was like, cool, the haze is going to go somewhere. But now I'm like, the haze doesn't change. It's just fragmented, abstract shit all the time with nothing tying it all together. And that just leaves me here wanting the character that was actually successful, that actually did capture the imaginations of so many fans, young, old, and somewhere in between like me. And I'm bummed, man. I'm bummed by that lack of commitment. So I definitely get where you're coming from with versions of characters you miss and that you cling to and you desire to have seen more of. You're lucky yours was the Phenom, the greatest character of all time.
No, I was unlucky. Don't you understand?
I think you are lucky. You could go back and trace the steps of everything The Undertaker did thanks to Peacock, or the WWE Network for you international.
I just remember through like 2005 to 2010 or whatever, like that whole Phenom run was just not it for me. Like, that's what I'm saying. Like, I thought I wanted it, but then I didn't, or they gave me like just a slightly different version. And I get it. The guy had to change how he works. It's a PG thing. Like, they're not killing people with final burial matches, like
no.
it is.
You can't impregnate the boss's daughter with a antichrist anymore. We've moved on.
Right. Like the DX sucked at that time too, right? Like, you can just throw them under the bus. Like, PP, Kaka, Booger, Eat My Farts, DX just sucked. Like,
yes, it did. Because it was just two older guys who were trying to recapture the heyday of their younger years. And even though you like seeing two friends hang out and be buddies, was it believable? No. The part of them that was still believable was that they're top guys with, entire legacies behind them and memories packed with nostalgia. Like, they had enough to still keep everything afloat, but did we buy them as degenerative, overgrown adolescents? No, not at all. We don't believe that. We'll believe everything else, though, because we love DX and we wanted to appreciate it. And in many ways, the love or the nostalgia for something will often be able to trump a lack of commitment. Like, you might say, well, theoretically, The Undertaker's lack of commitment to the old character traits was superseded by the fact that, man, it's still the Phenom. He's still been doing this for 20 years. He's still rolling his highs in the back of his head. He's still striking lightning every once in a while. Visual effects, who gives a shit? Point is like, there was enough to get him over that hump, if you ask me. And I think the rest of the world would probably agree. Like, Undertaker's legacy lived on for many years after that return in 2004 at WrestleMania 20. So, like, it's all about whether you can make the fans believe. Wrestling is what? Play fighting, right? It's fake fighting. It's choreographed violence. But we believe it's real when somebody falls off a ladder, goes through a pair of tables, and busts open. Oh my God. Oh, it's real, right? I was freaking out when Moxley's jamming a fork down Hangman Page's hairline, right? Because it looks real, and I'm believing the pain, right?
It's giving you a reaction. It's giving you like it's an undeniable reaction.
It's visceral. It's natural. And as long as wrestling is able to appeal to the natural expectations one might get from this character or this matchup or this storyline, they're going to succeed. So that's the secret sauce that is both, well, just missing at times, but when it's there, right? When it's there, that's when you're getting the moments and those segments and those ideas that stick with you, that resonate with you, that you wish you could hold on to, that you miss when they're gone because for some reason they just can't get booked better and treated like a monster. They have to have their head smashed in by a sledgehammer in the middle of a Hell in a Cell match and have their title lost prematurely to a friggin' jerk from WCW days who used to bulldoze 112 folks and is just entitled because he thinks he's a legend. I'm so salty. I'm sorry. But the point is, man, I miss The Fiend. And fuck Goldberg.
See, this is a great discussion we can have with like an upcoming Chris Jericho episode, because it wouldn't be a scheduled for one fall podcast if we didn't talk about Chris Jericho in some element. And I think because we do so much like broad, generic, overarching stuff, I do think we end up talking about like the same names and like their involvement in whatever topic we're talking about. So that's part of it. But when it comes down to it, I'm trying to think of how to put this.
How to tie it all together, right?
Yeah, like what was the word? What was the phrase you were using with the
Phenom.
Yeah. Okay, yeah. You wanted the Phenom back, right? And so I guess what I'm trying to say, I was trying to think of like a better way to tie this in, but I think a lot of legacies are getting tarnished by being around too long. Like, the longevity of guys in the sport is much better. There's no more, like, companies just taking over, right? Like, there's more static companies. You don't travel from territory to territory, et cetera, et cetera. So for a lot of reasons, you're getting exposed to people. And this is, why the Jericho thing comes up is, the more I'm exposed to something like Goldberg, the more I don't like his legacy because you're adding more parts to it that are subpar. Same thing when people, like the Goldberg versus Taker match was just like, God, erase my mind.
You mean the Crown Jewel one where Undertaker almost died?
Yeah, like, I want to be somebody who sticks up for Goldberg because my impression of Goldberg is like everything up until him and Brock Lesnar had that shitty match at WrestleMania 20, and I can be like, for what it was, guy did okay, for who he was and how they put him into the business, and something got hot and maybe it shouldn't have, but it did, so what can you do? Like, don't want to punch the guy for his success, right? And it could end up being like neutral, right? Like a 50-50, like, yeah, some of it was really good, some of it was really bad, whatever, Mm-hmm. But like, ever since he's decided to come back and just fuck up match after match and main event after main event because WWE just goes, oh, what a name. Oh, people like Goldberg. Oh, we'll just put some Goldberg in the main event because it's the name Goldberg. It just sounds good when you say it. Like, I can't. It's the same thing with Jeff Hardy, right? Like, it's the same thing where it's like, man, just quit while you're ahead. Like, because now, if you're talking legacy, now if you're talking career, now if you're talking overall, I can't just section it off. And that could be a great reason to actually reinvent yourself and have different characters that you can separate. Because I can talk about the Phenom, and I can separate those years from Badass Undertaker. Because when I think American Badass, I don't think Goldberg dropping you on your head and fucking getting concussed. I don't think versus DX, and the shittiest tag match of all time, gassed everywhere. I don't think of losing the streak at WrestleMania. When I think of American Badass, I end up only thinking about Taker doing his best singles work and like his best promo work because he got to really like open up and do more normal promos. I mean, dude, Ric Flair versus Undertaker, one of the greatest feuds of all time.
And it's about WrestleMania 17 on that one, or was it 18? I'm trying to remember.
I don't know the fucking pay-per-view. I just remember David Flair getting his ass beat in a toilet.
Yeah, that was 18.
Like, I don't give a shit about that. I give a shit about Undertaker taking you to school and sitting there with his feet up watching the monitor and going, and when Ric Flair turns it off, he's like, hey, that's the best part. There's like no motive there, right? Or I mean, there's like the why is like he's trying to pick the fight. Like, it's so
funny, man.
It's really quick. It's it's so corny, basic ass wrestling, but it's the characters that make that simple why work.
It's the simple why. If you could boil down a character's entire persona to one word and have everybody in the room go, yep, that's it right there, then you know you're dealing with a star, okay? What was Badass Undertaker's one word? I know you know it. I know it.
Respect.
Yes. What was okay, we'll give you a freebie. What's 2009's CM Punk's one word?
Straight edge? I don't know. That's 2 words.
Yeah, straight edge. Yep.
That's 2 words. What?
You can hyphenate it. You can hyphenate it, but you were still right. I mean, it was that simple. Okay.
The fact that it was not correct, but also the right answer proves the point, though. It's still the first thing that came to mind.
What about Kurt Angle? What's his one word?
Oh, gold medals.
Right, Olympian. Agreed. 100% agreed. Like anything referencing his victory. Well,
this is just word association at this point.
What about Steve Austin? What last point I'll prove? What about Stone Cold Steve Austin's one word?
Beer. It's beer.
I'm going with rebellion, but that's okay.
Bullshit. No, that's bullshit. I'm sorry. It's beer.
But beer is a great character trait for you to take on to help round out the idea of rebellion for sure, because so many kids are like, I want to drink beer.
It's either
And
that or it's what.
so many employees want to kick their bosses' asses, right? So, not literally for any of my bosses that are listening. I like my management. Anyway, if you could boil down a character to that one word and have the room resonate with it, you got it. That's it. You're in. And
okay, what's Chad Gable's word?
Short.
No, it's shoosh.
I should have known that was coming, but boy, am I still waiting for Chad Gable. I mean, with all due respect, actually, I should just take a deep breath and realize he is on television every week having some sort of fun.
Okay,
moment.
This was not an invitation to gush about Chad Gable. It was
okay.
to make fun about the one word is just his catchphrase, which is different than everyone else's.
Fine, then I'll shoosh. But I think the point is coming clearer and clearer here. And the one word that I'm gonna go ahead and throw out there that is making MJF, just to circle back for a second, the greatest pro wrestler on the planet today, right now, is his one word. And his one word is the correct answer that so much of wrestling is lacking. And that is commitment. He is committed. And I don't know.
Really, it's not shithead?
It's not dickhead, no.
Shithead is what I said, but yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's not any of the various insults you might want to throw at him. Though it's an excellent character trait. It's definitely a portion of what he's bringing to the table. But the man's commitment right now rises through everything in what he's doing and making him easily the clear choice for whom we wish to watch week in and week out. And he's believable. He's so believable. And, he's got some traits to him as a person that definitely make it easier for him to be believable, like his naturally smug-looking, I want to punch that guy kind of face, to the pretentious tone that his voice has that poor Seth Rollins has typically lacked, I only say that directly at Rollins because Sam and I were having a conversation earlier this week where you had compared Seth to MJF and thought, man, MJF is everything Seth should have and could have been. And I thought about it for a minute, and I agree, but I also disagree. There's a certain other way that Seth is getting over right now that it certainly feels like an amalgamation of certain superstars. Like I see a lot of Jay White in him, and I see a lot of I do see a lot of vintage Edge in him. But more from the character work. I see a lot of Judas effect Jericho from him because of the encouraging the audience to sing his song. I see traits that he's borrowing and taking to make this person he is. But his one word is starting to ring true. And honestly, it's I want to say it's CrossFit. I know that seems weird, but for me, that's what's starting to elevate out of his character, is that everybody's now starting to respect Seth Rollins for being in ring about as solid as anyone can possibly expect.
Bro, where's his 1 hour Iron Man match?
I think it's on tap.
How have we not gotten a Seth Rollins
to signify his return to the top of the card? And I think that's where you're going to see him really embrace those gimmick matches that helped a Triple H supersede so many things, or Daniel Bryan for that matter. Those kinds of matches that are synonymous with true workhorse wrestlers. I'm sure I can pause here. No? Okay.
What?
But Seth, I just pause, like, in case you want to cut in, because I know I've introduced a couple of different things here, but I really was inspired by your comparison of MJF to Seth Rollins, because in ring, I think anybody who pays attention week in and week out would go, Seth is better in the ring.
Then who?
Go ahead. Okay.
Then who? Wait, stop doing what? Then who?
Then MJF. That's what I was comparing.
Oh, no, not even close. Well, at least not after that Iron Man match. But that's the thing is, I see Seth Rollins do a fucking throwaway shitty match where he does all his moves every other fucking week at least, whereas MJF is smart enough to wrestle once a month.
Okay. Okay.
which he
Fair
then
enough.
expertly worked into his character.
Yeah. Certainly, it's a character trait. It's context that provides justification to the decisions he's making. You can almost argue the reason why Seth isn't the best at the top of the mountain is because you can read through Seth's entire line of work that he wants to be the best, that he's begging to be recognized as the best, that he's choosing to do everything he can and say yes to every situation like every other good employee might want to do if they want to be the best in their field. He's doing everything he can to just absorb what works from others and add his Seth flair and work every match he possibly can and take every bump in between. But MJF on the other side is like, I'm lucky. My character's a douchebag. I'm a douchebag. I'm not giving you any of me. You don't need to see it. And that works because we as fans want to see more. It's masterful and it's just simple character decisions. Seth's biggest mistake that has kept him from being in that same conversation is that he just wants it too much. It's the smell of desperation. It's the same reason why I couldn't get a date until I was 18. It's it's just read on his entire character's persona that he wants you to view him as the greatest and not even as champion. Like it's not like he's like, I'm going for the title, like he's got a freaking twitch for it. He just he just wants to work the best match of the night, no matter what. So
Seth Rollins is like a social media gimmick to me at this point, where like it's almost like he's just trying to do buzzwords and get attention any way he can. Like I wouldn't be shocked if he teams up with Austin Theory and their gimmick becomes creating 8-second viral TikToks where they fuck with other wrestlers and just do like, I don't know, inappropriate things in public, like smashing milk jugs on the ground.
come on. I mean, Theory is moving away from the selfie stuff anyway because that needed to go for anyone to take him even semi-seriously. He's still a schmarmy douchebag character who's hard to believe, as Cena so eloquently broke down for us when last we saw the two together on camera. We don't believe in Theory. We can't buy him as truly smugly believing he's the best of any real field right now. I think he's grateful for where he's at, Theory that is. I think he's certainly looking to increase what he can bring to the table and to be viewed as a credible star. I think he's hindered by having a character that's too aligned with what MJF is doing right now, which is why it's extremely hard to believe in Austin Theory whatsoever. He just doesn't pull it off. He just doesn't have the context.
I'm just saying this style of the things that Seth Rollins does seems cheap and like like the fucking boots, the big foamy boots or poofy boots. Yeah, it's he might as well team up with Logan Paul then, bro. Like literally anybody you can substitute with that already has social media bullshit. Like that's what Seth Rollins is doing. He's doing the same shit that makes you watch a video on Facebook and scroll through shorts on literally every platform has them now, is micro 8-second ADHD no attention span content. Just anything that makes you go, wow, what the fuck is that, for 8 seconds? That's what it's about now. Like,
ow,
he's not doing
shit.
He's not doing like anything of substance. Did you kill yourself?
Dude, that
Did you
burn.
stub your toe?
I just had a hot take hit me. The hot take of the hottest of takes. Seth Rollins and his work with Logan Paul right now is the greatest thing he has chosen to do in years. I'm telling you right now, that's my hot take, and that's why I burned up for a second. I have got to say that this feud pitting the workhorse of WWE, who's proud of his athleticism, who's proud of his legacy, but has a chip on his shoulder because he's never been recognized as truly the top
Because he's already
dog.
done everything and there's nowhere else for him to go.
There you go. Whatever. He's overexposed himself in a way right? That guy is going up against the natural wonder kid that everybody hates because he's a terrible person, right? Who walked into the business and excelled at it to the point where folks are talking about his 3 seconds more than they're talking about Seth's 12 years. Okay? This WrestleMania match is going to be the best part of the weekend because I bet you to high hell that Seth Rollins in his core does not like Logan Paul whatsoever, nor what he's been able to achieve in the business as naturally and elegantly as he has. And it's going to be a natural and believable source of tension to make this match easily one of the best of the weekend. This is going to be better for Seth than any feud he's had in the last 2 years. I mean it. Hot take.
That is a pretty hot. Well, I guess until you said 2 years, because he hasn't done shit in 2 years that's been memorable in the slightest. So
Well, and part of that is because creative doesn't believe in him, despite the fact that all he wants is for creative to believe in him. Like, I feel Seth's pain as a person, and
no, Seth had his time. He was the guy. It's not like he was never the guy. It's just he was the guy in a time when WWE really wanted you to believe that there's two guys and not one guy. And that's the era he came up in. That's the era of his WWE, and it's a shame that he seems so loyal because he's a Triple H guy. You know, he's a fucking he's probably a Vince guy too, really, but he's definitely like a Triple H guy. They worked too close together, but like it's really a shame he's too loyal because no joke, dude, like just 2 years of doing other shows, like, you know, do a contract with AEW and they'll let you do independence. Have him go through that circuit again, which maybe he really doesn't want to. Like, I don't know his personality or whatever, but
no reason for it.
He could do like a microcosm of the Cody circuit, you know, see like what made Mox, like, you know, Mox managed to translate over really super well. Daniel Bryan has been getting like some of the greatest fucking reactions he's ever had, including the Yes Movement stuff. And I think that it would really just either bounce, like, because he talks all this shit on social media to other fucking wrestlers from other companies, and he's always like, why don't you come here? And they're like, I don't know, why don't you come over here? Like, and it's always just bank account. And it's like, look at how much people love FTR compared to how much people like Seth Rollins. And you tell me who's a bigger star right now in pro wrestling, Seth Rollins or FTR?
Well, if you're asking sincerely and you really want me to give you my answer, I think it's hard to compare apples to oranges in the vein that we're talking about a tag team with not just absolute in-ring credibility, like for sure. They both have absolute in-ring credibility, you can argue. FTR has this amazing ability to be so adaptive and lead their opponent through so many low-key spots that are more just to set the table, to move the story along, to help set up the hot tag, right? Like, the FTR is so strangely unselfish that and they're a tag team that they are really hard to say are definitively better than Seth. I think they're better at what they do than Seth would be in a tag team division, for example. But I don't think either Dax or Cash would be Cash Wheeler, right? I hope so. Dax Harwood or Cash Wheeler would be more interesting in a one-on-one match. You know, I watched a couple of Dax Harwood's recent one-on-one matches, and he's just as selfless against those people. It'll be a good 20-minute banger, but it's really just him facilitating sensical spots to help the other guy get better. Seth is going to be more the guy who's flashy, who's doing the physical things that many can't, like doing 4 frickin' Topotomicos in a row, or what's the vaulting one, the Tope con Hilo or whatever. He does 4 of those because he can just run and not gas himself out, right? He's got stamina for years. Or he hits his superplex Falcon Arrow combo. Or he hits his he's got another one. A couple, hits a turnbuckle power bomb out of nowhere, like he's just a machine and he's really good at that stuff, the flashy stuff, the stuff that makes you go, no, that guy's the best, sure. But man, I really can't. I guess I have to go with FTR because I can respect selflessness so much. But there's a certain version of what Seth does, giving back to his opponents. I mean, he'll take some incredible bumps. He will absolutely take some incredible bumps. But he's just got a moveset so deep that you'll remember how he almost won with that move, and then almost that move, and there's that one again. Like you were saying, he's overexposed his whole move list. Great question. Great question. But if you ask me if I wanted to watch FTR carry someone through a tag team match right now, versus Seth Rollins carrying somebody through a singles match, I would probably go with FTR. God, that was hard. Good job.
Okay, so who's a bigger star in pro wrestling now, FTR or Seth Rollins?
You want a star now? I think Seth is still the bigger star. Sorry.
That's fucking crazy. That's actually wild. FTR is like one of the hottest things. Dax Harwood has been all over the fucking place. His podcast is massive. They just fucking came back. They had a massive pop return where they got to fucking bury the actual tag team champs. That's wild to me.
I'm not saying I'm right. I'm just, you ask me a question. I still see Seth being serenaded every week. I see the reason why he has a platform to talk shit to all the wrestlers around the world is because in his mind, he's proven he's the best in WWE pound for pound in the same way Daniel Bryan once was, in the same way AJ Styles can be when he's motivated and uninjured. He's the ring guy, right? He's the bar for in-ring work. And that's a great feeling to have whenever you're the person at the office that you look around and go, they measure everybody against me, at least in this aspect. That's what Seth is. And I think fans embrace him for that to a certain extent because they love singing along with his music. They love, humoring his cringy heel work from time to time, his self-absorbed, troll character. FTR, they are more natural. They are relatable. They are quite human. They are likable right now, right? But their face run has been just about as organic as Seth's has. Like, in a way, it's true. Like, people started loving FTR for them a couple years ago, and I think the same thing has started happening for Seth because Seth has spent the whole last 2 years looking up to Roman Reigns as the one and going, why not me? Why not me? Like, I've proven it over and over again. I'm just as good. And then he's like, what? I need more character? Okay, here comes my clown shoes. Here comes my stupid costumes. Here comes my, like, cool. I've got a little bit of Jay White over here. I'll take that. I've got a little bit of Chris Jericho over there. I'll take that. I've got a little bit of Shawn Michaels all over me. I've got, I've got the only thing he's got that's against him is his annoying ass voice. His high pitched cackle like I'm Seth Rollins, right? Like, bummer for him that he has to overcome that handicap, but he's doing it. The world is embracing him in that role because there's only one, and the one is Roman Reigns. And you can tell in everything Seth does that it's killing him, that it's not Seth Rollins. It's killing him. Doesn't make it all the much sense. How come he gets to go part-time? Well, I'll go so full-time that people will demand I'm on top. And he's just trying to convince the fans to sing along and show everyone I'm the top star, damn it. Right? Amazing. I love it. But over here, you've got Dax and Cash who are selfless, and they really are. They do amazing work to look great, perform great, take incredible punishment, and dish it out, but all really at the end of the day to help their match be great and to help the whoever wins like earn it. It's a ridiculous question you ask me. But I do personally feel like more people are rooting for Seth right this moment, but I could very well be wrong.
I mean, I just don't see it. Crowds chanting to shit just doesn't mean anything to me.
That's fair, especially when it's orchestrated.
Yeah, he just hasn't done much of it. I wouldn't be surprised if they piped that in. So, if they just enhance it. But, I don't know. It shows, like, where all the different wrestling bubbles can be, though, right? Like, where all the different elements... Everybody has, like, a different wrestling universe now because it's not just one company.
Well, that's true. And it's really interesting to see how certain guys who go over to the other side have amazing runs. And it's really interesting to see how some guys who go over to the other side don't do diddly. I'm sure at this point, half the reason why we don't see Miro kicking guys' faces off on a weekly basis on AEW programming is because of him. He probably doesn't need it. He doesn't thirst for it as much as we would think he would, right? It's not maybe AEW's fault. Then you look at other single stars or other stars who've made the jump and you think about why is Pac with Death Triangle at all? He shouldn't need to be. He got to beat Kenny Omega, one of the first people to do so in AEW. I still wait for Pac to be a main event player because I'll watch his matches for the rest of my life if I get the opportunity. But this is a different kind of tangent that I'm sure we really need to be heading down. I just think it's interesting that we all assume that it's the company's fault when somebody isn't being used or built or focused on. I would have to contend, especially in AEW, that it's probably more to do with the performer themselves. That's a different question. Totally different train of thought completely. What are your thoughts? Do you think it's the superstar? Do you think it's the company? What is it?
It's always the company, right? You always gotta blame the company because it's not just a one-man show. It's not that person in charge. I think you gotta go for the company.
Interesting. Well, you think they tell Miro to just sit on his ass at home?
Yes, they don't have stuff for him. It's up to them to call them up. Like, even when it came to FTR, like, they were waiting for their call to come back, and, supposedly, according to Dax Harwood at least, he thinks that, because Tony Khan heard it through the podcast, that's when they got the call right after that.
Well, I think that's funny. I think they were just waiting for the right moment to get their good pop, and out they came, and they were gunning in the gym. You can tell they look ready to go and ready to reclaim the AEW tag team titles. And what better way than to really help the Guns through what will be their best match by default. And eventually, I suppose, I would expect them to drop the titles to FTR, and that should be great for both parties. You can't ask for a better honor when your kids like the Guns right now, except to give it to what is the hottest tag team in wrestling right now for all intents and purposes. So I'll look forward to whatever justifies that in AEW storytelling. But speaking of storytelling, I mean, we've done a really good job of avoiding talking about the Bloodline for almost 2 episodes now. How are you feeling about, the quote-unquote revelation that Jey Uso is still very much aligned with his brother and very much maybe threatened enough by Roman to fall back in line, turning on Sami Zayn, super kicking him, embarrassing him, all the violence in the center of the ring, you know, the ongoing blood feud between Solo and KO. I mean, KO just got taken out by Solo tonight, and what looks like just as brutal a beatdown as what Sammy's been experiencing, no doubt, eventually building to the potential payoff of Sammy and Kevin reuniting and facing the Usos for those tag titles. And, oh yeah, Roman versus Cody above all. Like, what's your take on the Bloodline right now?
Who cares? Who cares about anything the Bloodline does from here on out? Like, unless you were, I mean, I don't. At this point, at best, you just get Russo swerving back and forth. Like, it's just constantly like, oh, we're gonna go out there and tease that we're buddies, so I can surprise him and catch him off guard, because you know a super kick really hurts when you don't see it coming. You gotta lure in their trust. And it's like, where the fuck did Sami Zayn's character go, bro? Why is it that every time a guy turns babyface, they lose all their character work and they become the biggest dipshit alive? Like, he was the cunning strategist that was working his way in and finding uses for people and being useful to Roman. And, you know, even the shit where he would sit there and point out to Roman how selfish the other guys are, and, like, you know, just make it make sense. Like, there's no payoff anymore. I don't give a shit about anything. They're all just aligned with each other. And now, if Jay or even both of them turn on Roman, it's just going to look like a Russo swerve where we swerved the swerve that we swerved. Like, I just don't care of the allegiance hopping. It's shallow. It's lazy booking. It's completely without merit, because all this stuff that was with merit got the crowd reaction and people were happy, and then he super kicked him, and now it's just whatever, bro. Like, if the story is that blood matters more than anything else and they stay heel and, like, they stay a faction, like, cool, run with that. Don't give me pointless segments where they take like 6 minutes to just have the guys walk next to each other and then super kick him. Like, I just don't care anymore.
I think the biggest reason why you might not care is we all know that it's just the slowest step-by-step build to a KO and Sammy reunion so that they can take tag titles off Usos and end that historic reign. But then what do they do is my question. How does that elevate what KO and Sammy have already been? Can they hold another year and a half worth of content, you know, and try to rival the two previous tag team champions, which, by the way, if you didn't notice, if I'm not mistaken, the New Day got defeated by the Usos to end their record-setting reign, and now the Usos have had their own record-setting reign. I mean, unless KO and Sammy win these titles and then keep them for 3 or 4 years before retiring, for Christ's sake, like, you're getting set up for failure. Wouldn't you understand? Like, they can't be better as a tag team than the Usos and New Day were, right? They can't set another new record, you know, on the each day adds a new day to the record, you know, legacy that the Usos have established here. They can't. They're gonna drop the titles to some surprise team, and we're gonna go back to turning tag team wrestling into fodder. That's my biggest concern, is that they're just baby stepping their way to the obvious outcome, which may not do anything to benefit the two people who it would intend to benefit, KO and Sammy, at all. How can they grow from it?
I mean, that's the other part. Like, I saw Botchamania and they had like a funny Drake and Joss intro, which I feel like I've fucking seen before between Kevin and Sammy, you know, but now they've just they've like updated it with Bloodline clips instead. And like, I hate this friendship wrestling shit. Like, at least the Bloodline is like, you know, a historical wrestling thing where you can do the blood is thicker than water gimmick that, you know, has been a part of wrestling forever, right? And like, I don't want to see, like, who even wants to see Sammy and Kevin Owens team up? Like, do people really want that?
The only thing that it would really help me out with is if they somehow they commit so hard to their friendship that it leads to the kinds of like almost like the best friends gimmick where you hug every time, you know, how that can stand a couple years. They would need that to happen where it's a full commitment to the friendship and they evolve as people from it. And then yes, you know, maybe they get all the way up. Let's just be I don't know. They need to change. They need to change as characters to really meld with each other. They don't read to me as the most natural tag team, even though they go way back and commentators from here to the moon will tell you how much history they have together. They don't read as a tag team. So they need to prove us wrong that they are. New Day were the one of the best tag teams, one of the best factions, one of the best all of the things you can ask for when it comes to the concept of brotherhood or friendship or unity in a wrestling ring. Like they were the faction that was able to award two of its three members the WWE Championship through the popularity they gained, and one other member the King of the Ring tournament. You know, all of that used to mean a lot more in the past, but their three characters were able to achieve all those things without having to hurt each other. The Usos have achieved an even greater status as a tag team. And honestly, my friend, probably laid claim to the best tag team in WWE history line. Like, good luck, Hardys, good luck, Edge and Christian, good luck, Dudleys, good luck, Acolytes, good luck, Too Cool. I don't know why they're my sixth option, but just bear with me. The point is like, the Usos are historically the best tag team in WWE history right now. So to beat them, you'll get a certain amount of credibility, sure, but it better come like if you're gonna beat them, you better be a tag team and you better commit to it until I mean, you got to predict that at some point there'd be a turn from somebody, and then Sammy and Kevin start all over again to feud with each other. Again, does that even benefit them at this point? Probably not. Like, it just seems like there's no reason for us to want to see Sammy and Kevin win. There just doesn't seem to be.
The bloodline, like the payoff for the bloodline was ruined. The whole story for me ended when Kevin Owens came out after Sami Zayn lost the match.
Mm-hmm.
Like, it's just over. Like, Sammy lost. Who cares? He's fucking what, losing to Solo Sikoa? Like, he's losing to the fucking underling of the faction of the stable, and like they already did the whole bit where he's like, I don't want to team with you, I don't want to wrestle against you, I don't want to be near you. Like, that was a fine ending, and give it some time, whatever. Like, to just backtrack on that would be silly. And I don't know, man. Maybe it's trying to tell some kind of like realistic story of people who say things they don't mean, or things when they're upset and then they come around. But it'll be tough to bring that context in when I already just don't give a shit.
Well, one thing I just need to say is that Solo Sikoa is not the underling. I think they've successfully been able to build Solo into somebody who will stand alone sooner rather than later, capable of being his own star. And I saw an interesting article the other day that I'll just wisp out here for fun. Hot take that Solo Sikoa should win the championship from Roman. Well, that would be an interesting way to continue the Bloodline storyline, in which Solo Sikoa decides he's better than the head of the table and tries to usurp him, excuse me. That would be believable enough to me because of how well Solo has been handled since the day he walked into the main roster. He has been a beast. So well produced, so well presented. I I'm totally fine with him avoiding the underling line. Thank you. But the idea that the storyline's over, like, I respect where you're coming from. It definitely needs to evolve and change in some interesting way now to regain us, not just, having everybody lose at WrestleMania and then what happens? Do they fizzle out? Like, oh, that'd be weird. That'd be strange. After how long we've seen this be a really strong legacy, I would be I'd be almost heartbroken to see everybody just kind of give up and stop. Um, so I'm hoping some wrinkles will come in and make this not so step by step predictable. I'm hoping that the Usos will develop something beyond just simply being the great tag team that loses their titles. I'm hoping Solo really does.
Do they even
Roman.
defend their titles anymore? Is there even a tag team that's like worth watching them compete against?
They've defended here or there. They've done a couple defenses, like the.
Like, I can't even name another WWE tag team right now. What is a fucking tag team that even exists?
The Basham Brothers, the Beatdown Brothers. What are they? The Brawling Brutes. The
Brothers. Bang Bros.
Yeah, that's right. Hit that old callback.
They're a tag team because last time I saw them on TV, they were fighting each other.
Right, and they're about to next week in order to face Gunther at WrestleMania.
What tag team is Gunther in?
Oh yeah, Imperial, the Imperium. That's it. So
they're fighting in a tag team match.
There's Braun Strowman and there's Ricochet. There's Legado del Fantasma.
You're not naming real tag teams.
Yes, I am. I am.
You're not naming tag teams that are competing in tag team matches.
Well, there's a point, but that's just because the Usos have eclipsed so much of tag team wrestling in WWE, especially. Like, I'm just waiting for the day when we can see the Usos and FTR wrestle again. If that can ever happen, I'm just manifesting it because I'm ready for it. Love it. Would love it so much. You're like, hold on, Warren, just be patient. You're going to see FTR wrestle the Young Bucks. It's basically the same thing. So I'm glad I could just take that tangent off the table for you. But I do feel like the Bloodline storyline will evolve a little bit more because it has to. They're building into a dead end for Sami and Kevin to have a fruitful run if they even win. And we need to know like where everybody's going to be left behind if the inevitable happens and literally everybody loses their championships on the grandest stage of them all. I mean, do I dare ask you how you feel about Cody right now?
Who? It's not good. Like, he's a milquetoast, literally no character babyface who's trying to finish a story that was never told.
Or his life is the story, and you should just try.
Is the story that every single person just brings up his dad, and that's his legacy? His legacy is to forever have heel promos cut about his fucking parent.
Well, gosh, you want to talk about?
Is that what it means to be Cody Rhodes? Is every feud you have to go, I just wanted to wrestle, but now you made it personal, like every other wrestling match.
There is a danger to that. It's kind of a fun thing. You can think about it this way, where in that Dusty was the American dream, and he has legendary status. He's given so much back to the business. He's given, 2 sons into the field for sure. He's just
both of which who were American nightmares at different times, by the way.
Yeah. Well, there you go. Right there is where I'm going with this.
Already a tired gimmick.
Cody as the babyface, his character, you go, well, what's his character? You'll say he's the American Nightmare. And so you've got a baby face called the American Nightmare, basically derived from his father's legacy. So, of course, all that these people know what to do to add texture and context to this character is to dig at his father's legacy. It's what you're gonna do, because when your character is to be the contrast of your father, you're going to have every context provided to that your own character be about your legacy. And it's kind of his own fault. He built that character. That was his turn. And, I can tell you, as a wrestling fan who loves to create what it would be like to write stories and which characters would I make and how would I add relationship to make it more important and blah, 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 blah. You would think that this was a good decision to be the American Nightmare. But now, on the precipice of the biggest match of his career, as everybody does nothing but focus on his father's legacy, while his entire moniker reads more as a heel or a counter to his father, he's trying to complete the mission that his own father couldn't. As a baby face, it just that's the problem we might be feeling and sensing, and the thing that tastes funny about Cody is that he also is not as good. Just period. He's just not as good an actor or a performer in this character as I've seen him do for Stardust, for example. Like, he's just not as committed to it in a weird way. Like, not only that, but his entire concept of being better than his father is almost like unpalatable because of his choice of character, his choice of juxtaposition against his father's moniker, the fact that everybody can only focus on his father to find pathos in this thing. You're right. There's a certain white toast, uninteresting, unexplored, unjustified, untextured aspect to Cody right now that deflates the notion of him being the guy. Unless apparently you're much of the audience. Like, look at WWE Universe. That I don't get them. The first time in a long time, I just don't get it. Why right now they're loving this guy as hard as they seem to be loving them in presentation. Like,
Because he's never gonna be hotter than when he debuts, and then he got his push because there was supposed to be a story to tell, but because he got injured or whatever, you can make the excuse that they didn't have time for it. But there's no other time where the iron is going to be this hot, so they're trying to jump on it right now, and that's not how the artistic element, it's not how the storytelling element of this works, but it is how the hype culture, social media culture, people just want to be where everyone else is. They want to talk about what everyone else wants to talk about, and there's just a natural energy or whatever hype around it. So there's no better time in WWE's mind than to ride it all the way right now, because you're never going to get the Cody Rhodes returning to WWE and fighting for a title intrigue or attention than you're going to get even with the worst possible version of it, with the worst possible buildup of it.
and it is feeling pretty lame. I'll be honest. I'm not biting on, all this familial stuff. That's always been his character. In a weird, zoomed out, broadened way, it's always been about the Rhodes name. When he was dashing, it was his effort to try to find some other way to be himself without needing to rely on his father. But Cody's actually not a very good looking guy. So handsome Cody Rhodes, at least to me. Sorry if you're going to disagree out there, all you avid lady fans I know who listen to this. But he's not the most appealing looking dude. He's not that dashing. Didn't really work. We didn't believe it. So he got ugly, right? And he put a bag on his head, and we did our best. That was maybe the best version of him, if you ask me. Actually, was when he was the beat up, ugly looking, Hunchback of Notre Dame type character. And then he does Stardust, which we embrace because to everybody, it basically signifies he's not going to be a main event talent. He's not going to win the championship. But boy, did he go out there and commit his ass off to that character, and we all applauded him and went, bravo, good for you for making shit stink less. And that's when he left.
Did
said,
we?
well,
I thought people just kind of talked all kinds of shit about it and was like, wow, what is WWE doing? This sucks. I don't know if they blamed Cody or not, but I don't think we embraced him. Maybe posthumously.
Well, I admired. We all knew how upset Cody was about having to be Stardust, but what I loved is that he put it aside and gave the character his 150% effort, and nobody will challenge that. And it was the straw that broke the camel's back. Like, Stardust is what sent him packing so he can go find himself. And what he found is that that was enough of a brave move, that enough of the WWE universe connected with him from afar, that maybe that's why we're getting to see him have that reception when he's back, right? There's all these people who watched him leave, didn't commit to AEW, so they don't know how good he really is or isn't, right? And now he's back to as he would put it, finish the story. But you and I know from watching him do his AEW work that, well, I mean, his shit still stinks a little bit. It's, you know,
At least
he was almost like booed out of the building when he was last on AEW, right?
At least in AEW, you could work the angle that he's an executive vice president instead of his family angle. You could at least work like the wife angle instead of the American Dream Dusty Rhodes angle. And he comes back to WWE and he loses all that. And you can only play with that he's Dusty's son, basically.
And that's the problem. But he's lucky because enough of the WWE universe doesn't AEW at all and didn't see how fish out of water he was by the end of his run there. Like, if all things, I mean, apart from his relationships with the other EVPs, which were probably fine enough, you know, the whispers when he left AEW was that he wanted to still be prominent, and AEW was going like, well, but actually they don't want you to be. Like, listen to the fans, man. You're kind of like, what else do we do with you? Who else can we put you with? What's going to feel like it matters? And he was like, well, I have no other choice. Like, it's back to the other company to finish my legacy, right? To reestablish it. So you're right, man. It's a weird thing, but I think I'm beginning to feel like the Bloodline has to win everything at Mania, or there's mistakes being made. We don't know who Cody is, except the moniker American Nightmare and the history we watched him leave with, right? And sure, that's enough for us to root for him, but damn it shouldn't be enough to win. And then you look over at the tag team match, and the Usos are the best, like, on paper, with just the objectivity of a record on their resume and the sheer number of titles they've held. They're the best tag team WWE has ever had. I mean, just saying. What on earth is going to make a couple of reformed friends believable enough and desirable enough to beat the best tag team in WWE history? They need to lose too. They need to be set the example of. But now you might be running the risk of all three of those victors, all three of these Bloodline members being too good to beat and too untouchable. And it's scary. It's like, well, who's going to be those people? Who are going to rise above? Who can be better, you know? And, you know, I'll just swing for it. If it were me, I would have to think Big E returns and partners up with X or Kofi, and they just take him right back eventually to end that portion of the Bloodline's dominance. And then I think Solo Sikoa should be crowned over Roman because somebody needs to be better, and that's the best way you could that's the best way you could put over the fourth guy in your faction.
Dude,
who
but they don't break up.
Who needs a reason? Well, I mean, then you could break them up, man. Then you can have them do their own thing. Yeah, break them up. Roman does not need to be in wrestling anymore. He's definitely proven he's got the chops to jump to Hollywood when he's ready. His health would.
You think he's got Hollywood chops?
I think that there's certain characters.
When they made his character's gimmick that he talks less?
Well, you have a point. I mean,
they made the whole Bloodlines thing is that they don't give the best promos, so they spend 90% of the time just mean mugging and, like, you know, absorbing the crowd reaction and shit. They had to have Paul Heyman launch the fucking stable to get it to be, you know, to have promos that people actually mattered and cared about. And then Sami Zayn had to enter the fold for them to have legitimate back and forths on the microphone and get the twins involved instead of it just being Roman Reigns saying, acknowledge me with 30-second gaps minimum in between.
They all got better. I'm just gonna die on the hill that Roman got better and Jay got better and Jimmy got marginally better. Like they all got better. And so
Well, part of it is because it became more true, right? Any part about the promos is as time goes on, it just becomes more true.
yeah, it does become more true. And there's still a couple ways that, I forgot, of course, Jey Uso may have just maintained his alliance, with the bloodline because of fear, because Roman's traumatic treatment of him in the past, which isn't hearkened to enough, if you ask me, may still trigger an opportunity for Jey to be the one to usurp everything and change the script. And there's still hope in me that they'll find new wrinkles to this overall. But in my heart, I'm disappointed to realize, like, and I don't think Cody winning right now, or not Seth, but Kevin and Sammy winning right now, would do anything for those victories, or give a better memory to what's been built that they have toppled. That was terrible wording, but you get what I mean. It's not a good justice to the champions who would fall. So something needs to change. Some storylines need to continue to develop, and the good news is that they've built enough sandbox here with enough great characters anchored within that something could pivot and change what we feel about it pretty soon. It's this weird realization I had pretty much while we were talking that none of them really should win at WrestleMania, and I know that's going to be unpopular for the fans, but I just feel like it's the right move. I feel like it'd be the wrong move for all of these folks to just whitewash away what's happened, especially Cody. Sorry, Cody's underdeveloped outside of the fact that the fans, remember who he was on his way out, and want to see that get paid off. But
And that goes back to Seth. Seth should leave for 2 years, and he comes back, and people will remember who he is, and they'll be excited that he's here again. And hopefully he can do something more than just go, well, I mean, I do want the world title, the biggest title. If he can just do something more than that when he comes back, like, he would become the biggest star in wrestling probably overnight.
Seth leaving right now is actually something I can imagine, because as I was mentioning earlier in our conversation tonight, Seth feels disrespected as a human being, not as a character. The performer feels disrespected, and you see it in every way he acts out when he feels brave enough to step out of character. He is disrespected because every time he busts his ass in the ring, and every, month in, month out, every match he works, and every way he overexposes himself hasn't made him the number one guy. And when he was trying to be the top guy, you're absolutely right, man. They were still pushing Roman. There was still Brock Lesnar around. There was still Triple H doing part-time work. Cena would still wrestle occasionally. There were enough people and enough bigger stars that even when he was near the top of the card, he wasn't the guy. And it's like Cody's story on steroids, because even though he was given titles and treated like a top guy, he was never the top guy. So he gets to leave, have this shitty chip on his shoulder, stomp the crap out of everybody in the independent circuit, top to bottom, inside out, having banger after banger of match, and then come back and be like, do I get to be the guy now? Well, hopefully by then his voice will have changed, because that's going to keep carrying him lower down the card. Thank you very much.
Yeah, it's time for a shakeup, and it seems like he's trying to reinvent himself and stay fresh, but just with shallow ways to do it. Dude, WWE writers love to just give Seth Rollins and The Miz dumb segments because they know that they won't embarrass themselves and they can finish, going through it. Like if you give Bobby Lashley the same level, the same amount of words to say, it's gonna be rough. But those two guys can finish full sentences. So it's like Seth Rollins' character, like he just doesn't interact with other characters very often. It's always some dumb shit with the Miz that then brings in a third party, and like we have to waste the first 10 minutes on them being rude to each other. Like there's just nothing going on. There's nothing going on with them, and I need I just need
We
I
need
don't know,
Miz's character.
something. Yeah, I just need something to latch onto, something cool. Because if you're not gonna do something visually impressive, if you're not gonna do something visually disturbing, and if you're not gonna do something that is uh intense and relatable, like I don't know why I should come back for this product.
More, and I feel as if, now that I'm thinking about it, I feel as if Seth absolutely needs to win over Logan Paul at WrestleMania, not just in the grand scheme of justice or because Logan's a shitty person, um, or because Seth's the better wrestler, but it's because if Seth is asked to do the job to Logan Paul, like as a human, I'm pretty sure Seth will feel as absolutely disrespected for what he's given to WWE, and
Mm-hmm.
it could trigger some shit. Now, they could kayfabe that and have it be a vaulting opportunity for Seth to like change his character, get a certain edge, and start hurting people and like come for the Bloodline's ass or whomever is champion. Um, could be good content, or if they don't want to go that way, then Seth could be on his way out for real on a personal level. In the first major, like in honestly the biggest wrestler leaving WWE since Cody Rhodes, right? Um, which you can argue, no, I mean Jericho and Moxley and all those other great examples of fantastic wrestlers who've chosen AEW over WWE at this point. But Seth would want that. Like I could feel it. Like I there's a part of me, and maybe this is the part that sings along with Seth's songs, right? In the that the rest of the audience shares. There's a part of me that truly believes that um Seth is owed better at this point and truly believes that he deserves to be closer to Roman's level than he is. And I know he feels that. And I know that if he doesn't get something cool happening for him, either as a result of what he's doing with Logan or, something that they can write from this point on, then he's the biggest flight risk that nobody thinks about. And we would all be pretty we I mean, I as a fan I would be happy for Seth to want to evolve in that fashion. Like, go ahead, go see what else somebody else might do with you. Go for it. I'd be happy for him because that's self-respect, right? And I was happy for Cody when he took that self-respect for himself too and changed the wrestling world. But if Seth did that with the star power he already has, I mean, that could really change things. And so let's keep an eye on this Logan Paul Seth Rollins match. I am telling you, it has every reason to matter. And I don't just mean on the match card. I mean in life for both these guys, but most especially Seth Rollins.
Weird. It seemed like an easy bathroom break for me.
Isn't that weird? It's true, but there are ramifications, brother. There is plenty to think about here because when you spend 2 years building somebody into being the top guy, everybody who used to be a breath away from them starts wondering, why the fuck isn't anybody else getting a shot? And especially for Seth Rollins, why not me? And he has every right.
You
He
don't
has.
think Seth isn't happy for his friend Roman?
I'm not saying in that realm, like, I'm not saying he
Seth
attacks
just had a
Roman.
kid, didn't he? He probably doesn't even want to be world champ. He's
Ooh.
probably enjoying the different schedule, you know. Same thing for Becky, right? Like being champ would just like realistically for where you're at in your life, it's probably not the goal. Not for at least a couple years till you get a babysitter, you know, kid's gone through its like most formative years.
I'd love to agree with you, but I watch Seth Rollins peacock, and you know this is true. He peacocks everywhere. He's peacocking to the ring. He's peacocking on the mic. He's peacocking
I'm
on
talking about the
social
app.
media.
It's like a streaming app.
No, peacock like the concept of a male peacock fans out its feathers so that a female peacock will
Are
come
you just
and
talking about the way he
fuck him.
walks?
Well, gosh, you really ran over my punchline, but
I just don't know what the fuck you're talking about.
so legitimately listen to the nature, okay?
We're talking about the cock of the walk.
I'm talking about a peacock, the critter, okay? The animal, the bird. A peacock, a male peacock is the one with all the pretty fucking feathers, okay? It's not a female one, it's the dude, okay? The dude fans out his feathers, finds his mate, has babies, the end. Seth is peacocking constantly because he's trying to remind everybody that he's Seth freaking Rollins. That's why his name has freaking in it now, okay? He's
Also
trying
a
to
bad
remind
move.
everybody at all times in every company that he's the King Peacock, okay? Come and fuck me. Thank you. That's what he's doing.
Well, he sure got fucked, but
He did. Congratulations. You got Becky Lynch. You're set for life.
no, I meant like by the company, but
Well, there's that too.
I don't know, man. He hasn't been doing anything worth watching in a long time, so should probably pick better moments to peacock.
Well, and just like we were saying earlier, when you put it into context yourself, is it the superstar or is it the company? He hasn't done a lot in 2 years from your perspective because of the company. But boy, has he worked hard to adapt as many different little toys and feathers into his fucking plume that he can so that he can try to remind everybody, don't overlook me. I'm still Seth freaking Rollins. So, again, maybe I'm just somebody who can see the why in this one and inflate a Logan and Seth matchup more than the E could themselves, but that's the match to watch for wrestling history's sake, even more than the record-setting matchups. You know, the Usos could lose, then Roman could lose, sure, but that doesn't mean as much to what could happen to the wrestling world if Seth freaking Rollins can't beat Logan Paul. And that is a perfect place for me to hang my hat this week. I feel great. 1, 2, 3. Let's take it home.
I mean, I guess so, man. I don't really want to argue on the Seth Rollins thing because there's not much else to be said. And we covered the major plot points. I think it's pretty clear that Iron Man match between MJF and Daniel Bryan solidified them as the two best performers. And it's a shame that Daniel Bryan is like soft retiring, I would say. It's definitely a retirement style gimmick. You know, it's definitely a reason to be off TV for a while, but no one is. We're just not like drawing that line just yet. And it really shows that WWE has had everything just kind of fall apart. So on the road to WrestleMania, the wagon seems to be falling apart. I don't know any match. How far away is WrestleMania, anyways? It's like what, a month from now?
We are approximately 28 days or so, right? 18 days will bring us to March 31st, and then it's 20 days away, 19 and 20 days away. So there you go, math.
So 39.
What? No, it's
19 plus 20.
No. I was saying because there's 2 days, 2 days to WrestleMania.
It's 2 days away. It's the 15th.
No, holy God, WrestleMania
is today, not 2 days.
You, Sam Tate, climb back under the bridge from whence you came, troll. Listen closely.
Okay, say 19 plus 20 one more time.
Never again. I will not. April 1st is WrestleMania Night 1.
Oh, that's all you had to
April 2nd
say.
is WrestleMania Night 2. those days are 19 days and 20 days away, respectively.
Oh, we should just said that the first time.
Fuck!
Also, how stupid is it that WrestleMania is 2 days? I can't wait to complain about that next week. But yeah, on the road to WrestleMania, we're 2 weeks out, we just determined, and there's not a lot of time to generate interest. I don't know what matches have been announced, but I haven't heard of anything I actually want to watch. So this might be a WrestleMania skip for me.
Well, let's see if they can salvage the storytelling over the course of the next 2 weeks, because I'm not going to let you skip it. You know we're going to talk about it. You know we're going to cover it. And we know we're going to look to you, our adoring and interactive audience, to let us know what you think about how wrestling storylines are shaping up right now. What matchups do you still hope will come together for WrestleMania weekend? What do you think is about to happen to Daniel Bryan? Is he truly going to fade away, or are they just building up to an interesting Blackpool Combat Club feud with Daniel Bryan not being proud of the way his stablemates are behaving with their heel turn? Yeah, that's right. We could have talked about it more, but we're not going to.
We definitely should have talked about BCC more, because they're actually interesting to watch.
Too late. It's been 2 hours. You folks leave your comments. You folks tell us what you want to watch or you want us to watch, and we will see you guys next time on Take It, Sam.
Oh, you peeked out really bad there. Yeah, see you guys next week. Scheduled for one fall every Wednesday. Peace out.